Okay, welcome back for another baking video. Today we're going to be making a type of bread on a stove, and you can do it over any kind of fire, and I'll be showing you how to do that. I've had kind of a dilemma of what to call these, because in the US we call them biscuits, but when we talk about biscuits, we are not talking about this kind of biscuits. We are talking about the bread that we're going to make today. Then I thought of calling them scones, but some people call something else scones here, so who knows. You'll see what they look like once we make them, and then you'll be able to decide what you want to call them yourself. So I just wanted to go over how we're going to do this, and then I have to cook the sweet potatoes that are going to be in this recipe, and then we'll come back and continue with making them. So we're going to be using the same cup and spoons for measuring as we did for the cakes, but the process will be a little bit different. So let's look at the instructions first, and then we'll go ahead and get started with making it. So we need 1 3/4 cups of wheat flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and remember the tablespoon is the bigger spoon, 2 1/2 teaspoons, the smaller spoon, of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, salt is there, 1/2 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, 6 tablespoons of blue band, but you could also use cooking fat like kimbo or tamu, depending on what you have. 3/4 cup of cooked and mashed sweet potato. So we're going to be using sweet potato. Mine are not yet cooked, but I'm going to go and cook them and then bring them back when we're ready to start baking. You could also use pumpkin to make the same kind of thing. You cook the pumpkin and then mash it and measure it just like you would with the sweet potato. But my favorite is making it with sweet potato, so that's what I'm going to do. Then we need 1/3 cup of milk. The milk is here, mixed with 1 teaspoon of vinegar or juice from a lemon. So if you remember, this is vinegar. You can buy it in a supermarket, but you can also use juice from a lemon, and so we'll use the juice from a lemon so that you can see how that works. Basically, we are making sour milk when we mix those things together, so if you have a local type of sour milk, you can use that instead. So we'll mix together all of the dry things first, the flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, and bicarbonate of soda. Once they're mixed together, you take the blue band or cooking fat and mash it in with the dry ingredients. And you want the pieces of blue band to be like the size of cow peas, so not as big as beans, but not completely invisible. So little pieces of blue band. Then you mix in the sweet potato and the milk that has been mixed with the vinegar or the lemon juice. And then once you've done that, you form it into a ball and either roll or pat it out onto a table that has a little bit of flour on it. And you want it to be about 3 centimeters thick, and you'll see how that is as we get to it. Then you cut it into squares. You can use a knife, or you can do circles of different sizes. I have the top of a water bottle here, a small one, a bigger one, or a plastic container like this, and you use it to cut the circles. And then you cook it on a dry pan. So you can use this kind of a frying pan, or you can use the type that's used for making chapati, so we'll use this one. But don't put any cooking oil. We make it on a dry pan, and you cook it on one side, and then you turn the bread over to the other side, and you keep flipping it until it's browned on both sides and cooked completely through. And then it's done, and you can eat it. So that's the process. I'm going to go and boil these sweet potatoes, and then we'll come back and mix the things together. Alright, as you can see, I've boiled and mashed up my sweet potatoes, so we're going to set those aside and get started on mixing together these ingredients. So we're starting with the wheat flour, 1 3/4 cup. So remember, we're filling to the line on the top. Okay, so there's one cup. And then 3/4 again. And if I hold it up to the light, I can see clearly where the line is. Then I need 2 tablespoons of sugar. Remember that we want our things to be measured flat, level, so there's 1 tablespoon. And a 2nd tablespoon. Then baking powder, 2.5 teaspoons. Again, we want them to be level. There's 1. Two. And then half. We'll fill it up completely. And then remove half, leaving us with half of a teaspoon. Then 1 teaspoon of salt. Level. Half of a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. There's 1. We'll divide it in half. Then we mix those things together. Before we add the 6 tablespoons, we'll use Blue Band. Alright, Blue Band. I want to do the same thing that we did with the other stuff to make it level. So there's 1 level tablespoon. There's the second one. Three. Four. Five. And last one, 6. Tablespoons. So we want to just mix it into the flour a little bit, and you can use the spoon to mash it a little bit. Or you can use your fingers, it's up to you. And we just want to make sure we don't have big chunks of Blue Band left there, but it's okay to have small chunks, little pieces. So that looks pretty good. We don't have any big chunks in there. Oh, there's one chunk. Just some small pieces now. Little bits. So then we add our cooked mashed sweet potato, 3/4 cup. And this one, it's okay to pack into the cup. Okay, so there's my 3/4 cup. It's stuck in there. And then finally, we're going to add the 1/3 cup of milk mixed with 1 teaspoon of our lemon juice. So the milk is here. So I'm going to put 1/3 cup. And then I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Carefully make sure I don't get any seeds. And then I'll just mix that up a little bit. That's for my sour milk. Put it in there. And then we mix everything together until it forms a nice ball. So I'm going to, let me stir it together a little bit, and then I'll bring the camera over here so you can see better how it looks and how we'll spread it out and cut it before we start cooking. So you can use, like I said before, you can use pumpkin instead of sweet potato if you want. And you could also use roasted sweet potatoes, or here there's amukeke, dried sweet potatoes that people then cook later. And you can use the cooked amukeke if you want, but you might need to add a little bit extra milk to be able to make the potatoes wet enough to be like ones that are boiled. Alright, so we've got it all mixed together. I'm going to get the camera and bring it over here so you can see it, and I'll clear a space so I can put out the dough there. Okay, I've put a little bit of flour here on my counter, and I'm going to grab our dough, which is a nice ball there, and put a little bit more flour on top to keep it from sticking. And then I'll just use my hand to pat it down to the thickness that I want. So you don't want it to be super thin, at least like the thickness of my thumb, so it's as tall as my thumb there. So that's how thick I have them. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my small water bottle cutter to cut the biscuits. And if your dough is really sticky, you can always dip this into some flour to keep it from sticking to it. Mine's not too bad. So you can cut like that, or you could use a knife to make some squares. So let's just set those that are cut aside. And then what's left, we can just squish back together, flatten it out again, and then cut some more. And it's good to make sure that they're all the ones that you make are at the same thickness, because they'll cook at different speeds if some of them are thinner than others. So you go ahead and keep on sticking together and cutting out as many as you can with this. And then we'll go ahead and move over to our pan and start cooking them. Okay, so again, I'm using a gas cooker for my biscuits, but if you have charcoal or firewood, you can also do it. You just need to have some kind of a pan. I'm using like a medium heat. I don't want it to be really hot, because then it will cook too quickly on the outside of the biscuits and they won't get done on the inside. And so I'm just gonna bring them over here. The ones that are in the middle usually cook faster because they're closer to the flame, and so you can move them around on the tray as you go. So you want to leave at least a little bit of space around them so that they're not too close together, so you can move them around as they start cooking. I've also been places where we've used the cover for a heavy saucepan, and you put that over the fire and then cook your scones or your biscuits on top of that. So we're going to give it just a little bit of time to start cooking on one side, and then we'll start turning them over to check the other side. So we'll be right back. Okay, I've put a little timer here so we can see about how long it is on cooking these things, because I'm not going to run the camera the whole time. You can use a fork to turn them over, to go underneath them and flip them, or you can use something like a spatula if you have one, or you can even just use your hand, pick it up and turn it over. So we're going to give them a little bit of time, and then we'll start seeing if we can flip them. Okay, it's been about a minute and a half, so we're going to go ahead and start turning these over. They're getting quite done, the ones that are in the middle. So you can see this one on the outside is not cooking quite as quickly, so I can go ahead and move the ones from outside into the middle and the ones from the middle into the outside so that they'll cook evenly. Just turn them all over first. Alright, so you can see that they're starting to get nicely browned on the outside, but they're still not quite cooked in the inside, so we'll keep letting them cook and then we'll check them again. Alright, I'm going to take these ones that are in the middle. They're getting done a lot faster, and I'm going to shift them out to the outside and move these lighter colored ones to the middle. This one is okay. So you can go in there. Okay, they're still not done. You can try to break them apart from the middle. You can actually see still that they're quite wet on the sides, but once they get closer, I'll show you how to break them apart to see if they're done. You don't want to be breaking all of the ones that you're going to be serving apart, but you can test one just to see if it's ready. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Right now we're at about 4 minutes of cooking time. Okay, we're now at a little bit over 8 minutes, and I've been continuing to check every minute or two and keep flipping them over. I've added some of the other ones that I hadn't put on there initially, so just kind of moving them around on the outside, turning them. You can see they're all getting nicely browned on both sides. And when we think that one is about ready, you kind of see if it's still squishy on the side or if it's starting to get dry. Once it seems like it's getting fairly dry, if you think that it's ready, you can go ahead and try to break it in half this way. So you can set it like this and try to break it in half. So as you pull it open, you want to see if it stretches apart or if it comes nicely broken like that. So like this one is actually done, so it came nicely apart. I'll show you one that is not done. This one is still pretty sticky, so if I try to break this one apart, it's kind of like stretchy. on the sides. You can see like there are little strings of the dough that are still sticking together as you pull it apart. So this one needs a little bit more time, but this one is done. So you can do that with one of them when you think that it's ready, and then you can look at the other ones, and when they look like the one that's ready, then you can start removing them as well. So we'll go ahead and remove this one and keep letting the other ones cook. Alright, now we're at about 12 minutes. Overdid this one a little bit, got a little bit burnt on that side, but we'll try to keep them away from the middle where it's really hot. But we've got more that are getting really close to done. This one seems like it's ready, so I've set aside the finished ones, and we'll keep on turning them as we wait for them to get ready. That one seems about done. Alright, so we're getting close. Okay, we're at 16 minutes, and the only ones that are remaining are the second batch that we put on later. The first ones are all nicely done. Lovely brown color on the top and the bottom. And these are getting pretty close, so they just need a little bit longer. If you're concerned about the sides getting done, you can always stand your breads up a little bit and let them cook on the side to make sure that those get done enough. But they should be able to cook completely just by turning them over each way. So that's the basic process for making these kinds of breads over a fire. And I'm going to put up some instructions for some other types at the end of this video, and then you can make them following the same instructions that we did with this, where you mix the things together, you flatten or roll them out, and then cook them on a dry pan like this one. So those are coming up right at the end here. So here's another recipe for biscuits or scones or whatever you want to call them. Very simple one. And so you follow the same process that you did for the sweet potato ones that we made. And you can just pause this video to copy down the instructions. Alright, here's yet another set of instructions for some basic scones. So very similar to the one that we just made with sweet potatoes, but without any sweet potato. Okay, here's one last variety of scones that you can make. This one has flavor. You can use either, you can see vanilla yogurt plus milk, or you can use milk mixed with juice from a lemon like we did. And that if you use a yogurt that has flavor, that gives the flavor. This one is much more sweet, it has more sugar. And then you also have the option of putting dried fruits or raisins, sultanas in them that you can get from the supermarket. And those look like this, little dried fruits. So those are optional. If you don't have them, you can still make this recipe.